My name is Sarah Dree, and I am really excited to talk about my experience with Joyous. I have been on a 10-year spiritual and healing journey, and ketamine therapy was the tool that I found to really help lock in the healing that I was looking for. I had years of childhood trauma. I had compounded trauma, CPTSD, from adulthood. And I was really struggling with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation. I had tried lots of different types of therapies, talk therapy, somatic therapy, dance, just lots of different modalities to try to find and get to the deeper root of my nervous system issues, of feeling dysregulated all the time, feeling like I couldn't think clearly. And as I dove into learning more about how trauma affects the body and the brain, it can oftentimes hijack your prefrontal cortex and your critical thinking skills, your clarity. And when I started with a ketamine therapy, that was what started returning. So not only did my clarity of thinking return, my creativity came back online, my nervous system was able to be regulated. I started experiencing positive emotions that I didn't have access to because of the trauma that I had been experiencing. My suicidal ideation went away. It has changed my life in a profound way, so much so that I speak about my experience on podcasts. I wrote a book. I actually wrote 10 books last year because of ketamine therapy. These books were the way that I processed the trauma that was coming up during my ketamine sessions. So a lot of my trauma I had to process and narrate my way out. I ended up publishing 10 different books, not only as a way for my healing, but to help other people in their healing. And ketamine, after 10 years, was the missing link. It was the tool that my trauma brain and trauma nervous system needed to be able to live a life past the trauma and not get stuck in shame stories, dysregulated nervous system. And I feel like ketamine therapy got my life back and brought me home to myself again. Like a lot of people who have dysregulated nervous systems, who are experiencing anxiety in the body, or depression in the mind, or ruminating thoughts like I used to have, especially suicidal thoughts that would loop in my brain. I got relief from those immediately. I want to cry because it's so profound, the suffering that people go through that you don't know. So I, like so many people, am very high functioning, a trauma survivor. And so from the outside, nobody would know what my inside felt like. So my insides and my outsides never matched because I was able to be high performing and mask. And I feel like so many people do that, and they didn't realize that inside at any given time, I am having a panic attack, or I'm having looping thoughts that I can't get out of. And so it was in my daily life such a barrier to my success and quality of life. So then when I started on ketamine therapy, it was like my nervous system was able to exhale for the first time in many years. So I had CPTSD, and my nervous system was stuck in the throttle of fight, flight, and freeze. My body, my brain, and my nervous system could not experience safety. So what ketamine therapy offered me was regulation and safety in micro doses so that I could regulate, go on in my day, and start functioning. And the more I was able to regulate my nervous system, the more my creativity came back online, the more I could think executively and make good decisions for myself instead of my body being flooded with cortisol. Now things are getting regulated and I'm able to think clearly and make good executive decisions. And despite all of the different types of therapy or medications that I had tried in the past, some of those actually, the side effects were worse than the symptoms. So I would end up not taking the medication because the side effects, I could cope better in my day to day with the symptoms I was struggling with than the side effects that I was on. And with ketamine, I have only experienced positive side effects. My life in a year, I am now a published author. I'm starting a coaching program. I have workshops that I'm building out. I talk about ketamine therapy in my books and for other people because I know that ketamine, people can have impressions of ketamine that it is a drug, and they don't know all of the research about if you microdose it, it helps recreate new neural pathways, which is what a trauma brain needs. It needs to be rewired. So it's almost like getting a new operating system in your brain, and it assists with nervous system regulation as well. And in a year, my life has changed so profoundly. And that was the missing link for me in my healing journey, because it was support that my body and brain needed that I wasn't able to get from any other outside source. There's a lot of shame. You're afraid to talk to your providers about these because you don't want to have to get admitted somewhere and your life to get disrupted. Especially, I'm a mother. I have children who rely on me, and I was able to integrate my ketamine healing in my day to day so that I could start functioning better for myself and my children. So I was able to integrate it. I didn't have to go somewhere. The symptoms improved very quickly. That's the other thing too, is I received immediate relief. There wasn't a 30-day waiting period. I did have to work with my doctor on my dose and, build up to the proper dose over time. But I received the immediate relief in my nervous system that gave me back a quality of my life in my day to day so that I could function and cope and manage a household and manage a career and manage my children. And it helped build my capacity back up because my capacity for stressors for life was so small because my nervous system was running the show in my life, not me. And basically my trauma was in a way. So it has been an absolute beautiful experience because not only have I returned to my favorite version of myself, but this is a gift I get to give to my children, my community, my employer, to be the most regulated version of myself. And I think at the end of the day, the most healed version of yourself is the version worth fighting for and continuing to seek therapies and treatments for, because there is hope. I think my social network and family networks became better because one of my trauma responses was hyper independence. And so I really went into myself. I was estranged from my family, and I also could not tolerate a lot of stimulus or other people's problems, other people's stress. If they were, my capacity was so low because I didn't have capacity for relationships because I was struggling so hard inside. So with ketamine, it opened up my capacity. And so I had more capacity to listen to other people's problems, get out of the house. I more naturally started, last year when I was doing this healing work and writing my books, I was very much in hermit mode because I had so much to work through and I had such deep trauma that I did give myself a year to prioritize my healing. But as my capacity came online and my confidence was rising, I'm more out in the community again. I'm hosting workshops next week for other women. I have a workshop called Becoming Her. I'm going to be starting a coaching program called Bestie in the Gap to help women who are in transitions in their life of identity transitions, divorce, or just like you said, the different stages of motherhood or being and womanhood, where you have these identity transitions and you need someone to hold you in the gap and to keep you moving towards your goals and your dreams. So I think that certainly helped. I had more capacity emotionally to be present for my children, because that was what was really missing, was that I was so in my head that I couldn't be present. I was there, I was physically around, but I was not emotionally present because my brain was so hijacked with my thoughts, and I had a lot of ruminating thoughts. So this has helped me be able to put my thoughts into actions. So I can, I still have a lot of thoughts. I'm a very highly creative person, but now those thoughts are turning into positive creations. I have creativity again. On the spectrum of emotions, where you have positive emotions and negative, I could not get out of negative thinking or negative emotions. I was stuck in it. And the ketamine loosened that. During my sessions, I could start feeling joy and positivity and hope again. And those were emotions that were not accessible to me during that time. And no amount of positive thinking or trying to think positively or force it was going to unlock. It was like ketamine was the key that unlocked the access back into positive emotions. And as a human, you have to be able to live on the positive side of emotions, or you're not living a good life. You have to be able to re-experience joy, hope, laugh again. And I would actually say laughter returning to my house has been one of the most beautiful indicators that this medication has brought me back online, but my kids as well. Because when mom is sad and mom is the hub of the house and mom is depressed, it affects everybody. Your mental health journey is everyone's journey in the family with you. And if yours is not going well, it's affecting everybody else. Actually do have an interesting ketamine story, because there is a ketamine clinic in town, and I had reached out to them first, and I was going to get started with ketamine therapy, but it was substantially more expensive, and they needed me to come 3 times a week to the clinic and have someone drive me to and from. And at the time, I was a single mom and I had to drive for work. I was never going to be able to incorporate that into my reality. And so I ended up putting off ketamine therapy for another 6 months until I finally had an absolute nervous breakdown, like a nervous system collapse last January. That's what happened. But I had heard that you could do ketamine at home. And then I was like, you know what? Let's try this, because I think this could be more sustainable. I could work this into my daily life, because like you said, being a mom, you're busy. You got to get kids to school. You got to get to work. You don't always have the big opportunity to prioritize yourself over your daily priorities. So this was something that I could integrate into my daily lifestyle. I would just get up early. I would take my ketamine. I would do my meditation music, and I was able to integrate that in. So I think that's what I would say. I wish I had started it sooner rather than later, but starting it now is better than never. And so that's what I would say is, listen, if you're anything like me and you've struggled with suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, you have already tried everything in this under the sun. You have already advocated for yourself. You have gone to the doctor. You have tried therapy. Maybe try one more thing and do it now rather than later, because you're just putting off your healing one more day when you could be one more day closer to healing and getting your life back on track. So that's what I would tell people is sign up immediately for that doctor's appointment. You do your, what I really loved about this was that you guys were with the patient every step. So every day I was doing, I had to be reflective. How am I doing? What is going on? How is my depression? Has this gotten better? And I am living proof that every part of my life has gotten better in the year that I have been on this medication. So that's what I would say is that your life and your future and your happiness and your family's happiness could be one decision away. You could be one click away from 1 year from now, you're doing the testimonial. Being depressed, having anxiety, panic attacks, suicidal ideation, that is not a way to live. It is silent suffering and a lot of shame because people are afraid to speak up about it or admit that they struggled with something like that. And I think so many times people who do take their own lives, people act so surprised because they didn't know, or that person masked very well, or that person was so ashamed of their suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts that they didn't tell anybody about it. And the worst thing you can do if you are feeling suicidal is to stay in your own thoughts, because your thoughts are not safe. And you have to tell people, and you have to advocate for yourself, and you have to get help, because how much less would the world be without you in it?